Welcome to one of the most iconic buildings in New York City. Its official name is the Fuller Building, but thanks to the sharp 25-degree top corner, people began to associate the tower with a flat iron, and today the name Flatiron is stuck both to the skyscraper and the entire district around it. This unusual cake-slice shape has turned the building into a famous tourist destination. It has popped out in many movies, TV programs, and magazines, so you probably recognize this property even if you've never been to Manhattan. Surprisingly, today the 285-foot-tall Flatiron is almost empty, and these fancy walls hide a pretty mysterious dispute between their owners. But first things first. In 1901, construction enterprise Fuller Company purchased a sharp triangular plot of land on the crossroad between Broadway and Fifth Avenue. They hired an architect from Chicago, Daniel Burnham, to design the company's new headquarters. The task was to maximize every inch of available space, so Burnham produced a project of a 22-story triangular tower made of steel. The Flatiron building resembled the shape of a Greek column, which means that its top and bottom are slightly wider than the middle. Fuller Company approved the design and demolished several old buildings to clear the space for the future tower. Construction progressed rapidly, and it was completed within a year. Yes, they used to be able to do that. The Flatiron became one of the earliest buildings to have steel for its structural frame instead of load-bearing masonry. Also, it became one of New York's first skyscrapers and the first steel skeleton structure visible to the public. The curtain wall cladding was also then innovative. The builders used terracotta and limestone to wrap a chic finish look around the steel structure that carried the building's weight. At that time, many people believed that this unusual architecture would fail to withstand high winds. The project's engineers analyzed the tower's aerodynamics and created a steel frame to fight likely problems with the wind. But people still reported experiencing heavy gusts on the street around the building. The Flatiron building had a bunch of other issues. As you may imagine, furnishing this tight space was quite a challenge. Also, the tower didn't originally have any bathrooms for females. That's why lady tenants were at a disadvantage at first. But then the management added ladies' rooms and placed them on odd-number floors. Meanwhile, bathrooms for males were placed on even-numbered floors. Also, the first elevators in the building operated on a water hydraulic system, so it took over 10 minutes to get to the top. Now you can see why that system didn't catch on. It's not surprising that the media expressed skepticism over the new building. Some even called it Burnham's folly. But despite the naysayers over the years, the tower has been home to many companies and retail tenants. Also, the Flatiron attracted crowds of people. Gradually, it became a frequent sight in paintings and postcards, and turned into one of the most popular symbols of New York City itself. In 1929, during the Great Depression, the tower was sold at an auction for only $100,000, and in 1966, it got the status of an official city landmark. It means that any renovation or demolition works are impossible without the official permission of the authorities. Furthermore, in 1989, the Flatiron received the fancy status of a National Historic Landmark. The last tenants left the building in 2019, and it is sat empty ever since due to renovation works, which have triggered many disputes among the building's current owners and future tenants. Most of the owners wanted to turn the building into a hotel. Meanwhile, Nathan Silverstein, who owned a 25% stake in the property, wanted to divide it up. Finally, in 2023, the local court organized an auction on the building. The owners, who held 75%, intended to buy out Silverstein's stake to put an end to all disputes over the future of this building. The bid started from $50 million and the price soared to $190 million thanks to an unexpected bidder, Jacob Garlick. Surprisingly, he beat out everyone and won the auction. Some considered the price that he offered too high because the building required at least $100 million worth of renovation. Hey, it gets better. Garlick disappeared after the auction. He has never paid anything, not even the deposit, and he hasn't yet explained himself to the media. So for now, Garlick's location and intention remains unknown. Little did we know that it's possible to show up at a luxurious auction in New York outbid everyone, and then just vanish into space? Well, according to some experts from the real estate world, it's a very weird situation for a building auction. Usually, the bidders are asked to prove their funds in advance. Some people suspect that Silverstein asked Garlick to attend the auction on purpose, so that he could boost the price and earn more money. But Silverstein claimed that his relationship with Garlick had been distant. On May 20th, the second auction took place. Garlick was absent, but a coalition of syndicates and previous owners won the bid and acquired the Flatiron for $101 million. They haven't yet announced any plans, so today the future of the Flatiron remains uncertain. The age of the Flatiron building is only around 121 years, but this famous and beloved symbol of New York has survived so many chapters, from challenging traditional architecture to surviving multiple crises, including the Great Depression. So, chances are that this iconic tower will surprise us in the future. Oh, by the way, the Flatiron is not the only skyscraper with issues in New York City. Here's the famous half-built Leaning Tower of Manhattan. A 670-foot skyscraper is located at the corner of South Street and Maiden Lane on the East River. The tower was to host 80 super fancy condos to sell for up to $7 million each. The developer also planned to offer yacht services to the tenants. A pre-sale of this luxurious but unfinished project was launched in 2018. But in 2020, the tower began to lean 3 inches to the north. The developer put construction on hold and initiated a huge investigation to figure out why this tower refused to stay straight. Although the reason remains unclear, the consensus appears to be that a weak foundation is to blame. You think? And now, welcome to the Waldorf Astoria, a former host to authorities, royal families, and Hollywood stars, and maybe not so welcome. This Art Deco masterpiece is the very place where Marilyn Monroe once stayed and where Grace Kelly got engaged to Monaco's Prince Rainier III. But in 2017, the famous hotel was closed for a multi-billion-dollar renovation. The property's new Chinese owners, Anbang Insurance, plan to partially turn the hotel rooms into condo apartments by 2019. The condo price was planned to reach up to $18 million per unit. But eventually, something went wrong, and the date of the project completion was postponed until 2025 at best. Although, according to the media, the renovation might have already cost around $2 billion. Some insiders mention poor coordination within the project caused by the dismissal of its American director. They also blame the property's new owner, Dagia Insurance Group, which took over the project after the chairman of Anbang was sent to prison for fraud in 2018. To date, the future of the Waldorf Astoria remains unclear. So I'd try another hotel if you're visiting the Big Apple. And here's another heartbreak hotel story. In 2019, a development firm, Chetrit Group, launched the construction of a 33-story hotel near Madison Square Garden and Penn Station. The project was supposed to open in 2021 and join the management portfolio of IHG Hotels and Resorts, which runs multiple hotels. However, the developer failed to either repay its loan or complete the construction on time. Meanwhile, the hotel remains unfinished, and the estimated investment for its completion totals around $106 million. Hey, you want to finish the job?
Here's a riddle. Which U.S. city is so loved that its name should be repeated twice? You guessed it, New York, New York. But the thing is, how much of New York do we really know? I'm talking about the city that lies under the city. Dare to join me on an underground tour of the Big Apple? Then grab a flashlight, it's about to get dark. We'll start in the heart of Manhattan, in the front of the Romanesque City Hall building. Believe it or not, beneath our feet lies New York's oldest subway station, known as the Old City Hall Station. It opened in 1904 on October 27th, a night of true celebration for New Yorkers. People were so excited, some of them spent the entire night riding the trains back and forth. Before this, urban dwellers moved around in carriages pulled by horses. No wonder the subway was such a hit. You might feel like a time traveler stepping inside the Old City Hall Station. The architecture is dazzling and one of a kind. They sure don't make subway stations like this one anymore. Fun fact, the old City Hall station would cost $6.2 million if it was built today. Back in the day, it had dozens of brass chandeliers hanging around. It was one of the few spots in town with functioning electricity. And oh, not to mention brand new multicolored tiled arches and stained glass ceilings you can still see today. Impressive, huh? If you decide to wander down the tracks, you might be in for a treat. Underground New York is as fascinating as the city above the ground. But one thing we usually take for granted is the behind the scenes of what the Big Apple needs to function. Down here, you might see one or two of New York's pneumatic mail tubes. These tubes were built back in the 1800s and they were operational up until the 1950s. They were responsible for distributing people's mail through different post offices. Letters flew at an impressive speed of 35 miles per hour. That's almost as fast as a professional runner. It sure sounds like a useful system. But I have to say, it feels weird imagining people's correspondence flying around 15 feet underground. Back to street level. We'll wander around fancy Lexington and Park Avenues. If you look up, you'll see the famous Waldorf Astoria 5-star hotel. Many celebrities have stayed there, including John Lennon and Yoko Ono, as well as presidents such as FDR. This is why the hotel used a secret infrastructure to sneak people inside and out. Under the building, a tunnel known as Track 61 connected the Waldorf Astoria to Grand Central Station. The track was deactivated in the late 70s, but some people say Andy Warhol threw a party there in the 80s. I bet that was something. For the next part of our visit, we'll have to take the subway uptown. We'll get off at 125th Street and find ourselves on the scenic waterfront of Riverside Park. Here, you'll find abandoned tracks of an old metro line. If you follow the tracks, you'll get to an underground graffiti gallery, aka the Freedom Tunnel. The tunnel is named after a graffiti artist from the 80s who is commonly known as Freedom. While exploring these tunnels, we'll see over 40 graffiti pieces he painted over 15 years. There are spray paints of James Dean, Mona Lisa, and even a self-portrait of Freedom himself. Moving on, let's wander around the northern part of NYC for a bit. Walking in Van Cortlandt Park will feel like hiking upstate, but believe me, you're still in the city. Along the way, you'll encounter some big ventilation towers made of stone. These towers were once part of an old New York infrastructure. They make up the remains of what used to be the Croton Aqueduct. In the 1800s, the city's water supply flowed through a 41-mile-long underground tunnel, all the way from Croton River in upstate New York to Bryant Park in Midtown Manhattan. Oh yes, and I should probably tell you that Bryant Park wasn't a park. Instead, it hosted a colossal stone structure that looked pretty much like something ancient Egyptians would build. This 4-acre structure served as the city's water reservoir. It even had a pathway on top so that people could enjoy a nice afternoon stroll while looking at the reservoir's crystalline water. Now, all this exploring might have made you hungry, but don't worry, our next stop includes a yummy treat. We'll have to leave Manhattan and make our way to Brooklyn. In case you didn't know, New York City is made of 5 boroughs: Manhattan, Queens, Bronx, Staten Island, and Brooklyn. Crown Heights, that's our stop. Would you believe me if I told you that beneath these streets lie caves full of aging cheese? How very Parisian of them. To get down there, you'll have to make your way through a century-old building that now works as an office space. Maybe wave hello to all those hard-working people and disappear in one of the stairways that will take you 30 feet below the ground. You won't need a flashlight for this one. The caves are bright and renovated and can hold up to 22,000 pounds of cheese. But hey, it might stink. That's the main reason cheesemakers decided to use underground tunnels to age cheese in the first place. After a bite or two of some delicious cheese, let's keep going. While still in Brooklyn, you might see tons of locals enjoying a sunny day in the McCarran Park pool. This pool is a huge attraction, being 3 times the size of an Olympic pool. As the NYC explorer you are becoming, you might even go for a swim. But hey, there's a much more interesting part to this attraction. The pool was built in the early 1900s, but it was shut down in the 50s. During this time, urban explorers discovered a network of underground tunnels right beneath the pool. And, of course, you can find a secret entrance and get a peek for yourself. There, you'll not only see the pool's filtration and heating system, but also a lot of graffiti from the time the site was abandoned. Neat! This question may sound weird, but have you ever seen a cow in New York? I sure haven't. Well, maybe there's a reason for that. Apparently, New York still has underground tunnels that were constructed for the transportation of cattle. Once New York started to flood with automobiles, cows became a burden for traffic. Until a 200-foot-long cow passage was built below 12th Street to transport the livestock that was ferried over from New Jersey. These days, you won't be able to visit this place in person because the tunnel was most likely destroyed. But historians found blueprints proving its existence. To add to the list, archaeologists discovered a very peculiar fossil a while back. Now imagine peeling off the layers of the city's soil. First, at 15 inches, you'll find a layer of wires. I'm talking TV cables, electricity, and all that. Digging deeper, at 4 feet, you'll see water and sewage pipes. But then, at 15 feet down under the surface of NYC, diggers have found a fossilized shipwreck. The wreck is located right under Broad Street, where there was once shallow water. They believe the wreck dates back to the 1600s. It's 92 feet long and 25 feet wide. Oh, and that's not all. At the intersection of Bowery and Canal Street, engineers stumbled upon a room with its walls and ceiling covered in mirrors. And no one has managed to explain the existence of this bizarre place yet. Our Big Apple Underground visit is coming to an end, but we sure did more than just scratch the surface on this one. Before we finish, let's enjoy the best of what NYC cuisine has to offer, a good old bagel. Who knows, maybe next time we'll do Paris or even London. See you soon, explorer.
Ah, the Big Apple at night. New York, New York, the city that never sleeps. How can they? There are way too many lights. But I want to talk about these ones, the red ones. Here's what they look like if you come closer. These red lights are a must, and they're called aircraft warning lights. They're mounted on the top corners of tall buildings to ensure there's no risk that an aircraft will collide with them. The lights are visible for miles around the structure and will signal the passing aircraft that there's a building that they should avoid. Please. The lighting standards are set by the International Civil Aviation Organization and are adopted worldwide. Now they require that all obstacles 148 feet above ground level and taller are marked with warning lights. In close proximity to an airport, even lower buildings can be illuminated too. So, any building, towers, electricity pylons, and chimneys will have these lights for safety. The number of lights and light levels depend on the width and length of a structure. There are also different types of buildings. Some should be lit only at night, some both during the day and night. They can use red or white lights. For buildings that should only be lit at night with red lights, there must be lights at the 148-foot level. Taller buildings should also have lights at the 345-foot level and at 690 feet. Buildings that must be lit both during the day and night with white lights have them with 345, 690, and 1,033 feet. The first skyscraper in the world is the Home Insurance Building located in Chicago. It was built back in 1885. It was a special building constructed using a new method. Buildings used to be supported by masonry walls, which couldn't be very tall because they would be too heavy. The Home Insurance Building had a revolutionary design that allowed it to be higher than other structures. It had an inner skeleton made of steel. The walls around it could be way thinner than usual, and the whole structure could be higher. The Home Insurance Building was a 10-story one, standing at 138 feet tall. Today, it wouldn't even require any aircraft warning lights because it's not even considered that tall. Still, the building started the new construction era. It stood strong until 1931, when, together with several other buildings around it, they took it down to construct something new, the field building that Chicago has now. In 1931, the year the Home Insurance Building was demolished, the Empire State Building was finished. It is 1,250 feet tall, like 10 home insurance buildings on top of one another. That's the construction progress humanity achieved in just 46 years. The Empire State Building became the tallest one in the world. Now, long surpassed, it's the skyscraper that held the record for the longest time, for 39 years to be exact. In 1970, the World Trade Center became the highest one, although it was just 100 feet taller. Now, a bit more than a half a century later, the Empire State Building is ranked 53rd on the list of the tallest buildings. Humanity climbed way higher. Now, the world champ is Burj Khalifa, located in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. The building was finished in 2010. It's 2,717 feet tall, more than 2 Empire State Buildings on top of one another. Skyscrapers are often made of glass for several reasons. First of all, they can press glass in every shape possible. So, the skyscraper can no longer just be a plain boring tower as before. They can design it in any fancy shape as they do around the world. Second, the glass is thin. There's no need for thicker walls like pre-home insurance building times. The walls are thinner, and the floors are bigger, providing more inner space. Glass is also pretty light and allows to make the building very high. Transparent glass reduces the need for electrical lighting inside the building, so it's also very cost-effective. Even more, glass is temperature and weather resistant. And finally, it just looks posh, fancy, and modern. Compare this and that. The latter definitely looks more futuristic and cutting edge. Skyscrapers started out in the United States, but became very popular in Asia, which now has over 7,500 skyscrapers. A skyscraper is now a construction that is 492 feet tall and higher. 9 out of 10 tallest buildings in the world are located in Asia. The country with the most skyscrapers is China, with more than 3,000 of them. Asia has the largest population in the world, and its economy is booming. So, growing high happened to be a perfect solution to fit the most people in its cities. The second most skyscraper-populated continent is North America, with more than 1,000 skyscrapers. New York alone has more skyscrapers than all of Europe combined. And here comes my next question. Why doesn't Europe build skyscrapers? There are just 250 of them there, and half of them are located in just 3 cities: Moscow in Russia, Istanbul in Turkey, and London, the UK. Let's go back to the beginning, and that is the end of the 19th century when skyscrapers' history starts. The first skyscrapers were built in the United States. As an independent country, the United States of America was just 1 century old back then. They built cities from scratch. There was a lot of available land. People could build a house here, and also over there. By that time, Europe had been growing for a while already. The history of Paris dates back to 259 BCE. It wasn't 1 century old, but 20 centuries old. German Cologne was founded in 38 BCE. Rome, Italy's capital city, dates back to 753 BCE, so it was 26 centuries old back then. By the end of the 19th century, Europe had been pretty much built. There was not much extra room for construction, and no one wanted to take down the Colosseum and put up some fancy skyscraper instead. This is history, and Europe likes to preserve history. There was no practical reason for changing things. The driving force of Asian and American skyscrapers was the booming city population, and especially rapid urban development of city centers. As people were moving to the city from the suburbs, they needed more floors to accommodate more people on a limited territory. In Europe, despite the population growth and city migration, there was still enough room for everyone. The Europeans are very protective of their city skylines. One interesting story of Brusselization takes us to Brussels, the capital of Belgium. In the 1960s, there were no zoning regulations, and some buildings in Brussels were demolished to make room for more modern ones to develop business districts. Uncontrollable construction started, and modern buildings were built in random places around Brussels. They had no cultural or historical value, and they didn't fit in the city's architecture at all, messing up the city's image. Many architects and other people protested, and new laws were introduced, restricting the demolition of buildings of historical importance and taking construction under control. Other European countries learned from Belgium's mistakes. People across Europe still dislike modern structures. Many cities adopted zoning regulations, and building a fancy glass skyscraper in Europe isn't that easy. Still, cities with big financial centers, like London, Moscow, Frankfurt, or Istanbul, require commercial space. So, in some cities, there are several skyscrapers somewhere outside the historic center, forming separate skyscraper districts. And then there's Rome. It rejects any skyscrapers completely, stating there will never be a high-rise there. Some other Italian cities follow in its footsteps, willing to preserve their historical image. But there's more to it. It's not just people and cultural preservation. Building a skyscraper in Europe isn't as easy as in North America for engineering reasons as well. For example, Berlin, the capital of Germany, is built on muddy ground going down about 260 feet. That's the height of a 20-story building. Without firm ground, a tall building can't stand on the surface safely. Hey, ever played Jenga? Yep, it's kind of the same, only in real life. Building something really tall requires a lot of groundwork. Plus, it can be risky. That's another reason for the lack of skyscrapers, in addition to the attempts to preserve history. And now, let's play. I'll show you several city skylines, and your task is to guess which city it is. Off we go. Here's the first one. Very easy. What do you say? Of course, this is New York. How about this one? It's Hong Kong, China. This is the city with the largest number of skyscrapers in the world. It has 517 skyscrapers, twice more than all of Europe. Okay, let's move on. What city is this? This is Dubai, the United Arab Emirates. By the way, this is what the city looked like in 1990, before they found oil. Yep, it's the same city, and yes, it's just a 30-year difference. Can you recognize this one? It's good old Chicago, the Toddlin' town. What's next? It's Frankfurt, Germany. Okay, a couple more. You can make it. That's Istanbul, Turkey. And the last one for you, it's easier. I'm sure you'll recognize it. Yes, that's Melbourne, Australia. G'day, mate.
Have you ever seen a skyscraper that can change its shape? The creators of the F&F Tower in Panama City had a concept and only $50 million, which isn't a lot in skyscraper money. So they couldn't afford a mistake, and they finished a concrete structure with the 39 upper floors rotating 9 degrees around an axis from the first attempt without spending any extra time or materials. Dubai's rotating tower will look different every time you see it once it's finished. Each of its 80 floors will rotate 360 degrees individually around the center of the building. The lucky residents will be able to control that rotation, which means they can choose their view from the window. A complete lap should take about 90 minutes. And no, the tower won't be a huge waste of electricity. It will produce its own energy. Wind turbines between the floors will drive the rotations. If you've ever wanted to live inside a video game, book an apartment in the King Power Mahana Khan building. This pixelated skyscraper, around the height of the Eiffel Tower, is the tallest building in Thailand. The secret behind its looks is the horizontally and vertically divided glass windows. It took 5 years to finish this beauty, with over 200 apartments, a hotel, luxury shops, restaurants, and one of the most breathtaking viewpoints in the world. The Libyan International Building features one of the world's tallest artificial waterfalls, running right down its side. No worries, they only turn it on special occasions, and it uses a mix of recycled tap water and rainwater. When it started running for the first time, the non-informed locals even reported a huge water leak. The Cybertexture office building in Mumbai looks like a huge egg made of glass and steel. It was actually inspired by a vessel that, like our planet, has its own ecosystem. To bring down the heat levels inside, the architects chose the ideal orientation and added sun shading and an underground cooling system. The Marina Bay Sands in Singapore seems like a Stonehenge look-alike, but its architect claims that he was inspired by a house of cards. The horizontal one is balanced on the 3 vertical ones. They are 3 55-story hotels with restaurants, nightclubs, gardens, shops, museums, and movie theaters. The horizontal card is an infinity swimming pool with the best view of the city for up to 4,000 visitors. The pool hangs at the height of the 57th floor, and it feels like nothing is holding it. The dancing house definitely stands out among the more traditional architecture in Prague. The nickname for the house is Fred and Ginger. The stone tower symbolizes the famous dancer Fred Astaire, and the glass tower, his partner, Ginger Rogers. There's even imaginary hair on top of Fred's tower. 99 concrete panels support the dancing shape, all of them of different dimensions. Umeda Sky Building, twice the height of Big Ben, consists of 2 towers of glass and steel to the north of Osaka Station. The floating garden observatory connects the towers on top. Although the building is in a huge city, the skywalk is so high in the clouds that the only thing you'll hear up there is the wind. If you're scared of heights, you can visit an urban garden, a theater, an art museum, or one of the many offices closer to the ground inside the building. Architect Octavio Mendoza owns probably the largest piece of pottery in the world. If you're ever in Colombia, ask the locals for directions to the Flintstone House. Yes, they call it that for a reason. The official name is Casa Terracotta, and the architect only used clay to build it. He let it bake and harden in the sun, which transformed the pliable material into solid ceramic. Every curve of the building is designed after the surrounding hills. All the furniture inside is also made of clay. Mendoza is determined to work on the casa for the rest of his life. Artists Dennis Sullivan and Francis Conklin have been saving money for 15 years, carving smaller wooden dogs to create their dream project. The Dog Bark Park Inn in Cottonwood is a 12-foot beagle that stands proud in the Idaho prairie. There is a bedroom and a living area in its body, and an extra bedroom in the head. Have you ever wondered what it's like to be inside a huge carpet? Me neither, but checking out the Azerbaijan National Carpet Museum is definitely worth it anyway. It shows the history of this important local craft in every detail. Austrian architect Franz Jans designed the construction, and it took 6 years to finish it. The Basket Building in Ohio looks exactly like a real shopping basket, except it's 160 times larger. It even has 2 attached handles. The building served as the headquarters of Longaberger Basket Company, then was sold to become a luxury hotel. A giant whale? An airship? Can you guess what's inside this building in Graz, Austria? 2 British architects won the Europe-wide competition to design this art museum. The biomorphic construction has around 1,000 acrylic glass elements on its skin. During the night, it can send light signals and messages to people on the other side of the river. It takes in daylight from the north through nozzles on its top. The needle is a viewing platform. The Half House in Toronto, Canada, was built in the late 19th century and was one of 6 identical houses standing next to each other. When developers came to this area, the owners of all the other houses agreed to move, and this one wouldn't go. A demolition crew showed some impressive skills as they managed to tear down the neighboring house without doing any damage at all to what is now the Half House. The white exterior wall used to be load-bearing, dividing the neighbors' bedrooms and living rooms. One wrong move of the excavator, and the entire construction would become ruins. The Shell House in Isla Mujeres, Mexico, stands by the ocean, was inspired by the ocean, and looks like one of the ocean's symbols. The house is shell-shaped and covered with shells from nearby beaches. Architect Eduardo Ocampo designed this beauty as he wanted to have a one-of-a-kind house for his brother to come and visit more often. Now it's up for rent for vacationers. The Bubble Palace, not far away from Cannes in France, was designed by a Hungarian architect and purchased by Pierre Cardin. In case you have a couple of spare million, you can buy this interesting property. You'll get 10-bedroom suites decorated by contemporary artists, gardens, water ponds, a swimming pool, and a 500-seat outdoor auditorium with an awesome view of the Bay of Cannes as a bonus. Can you find one house standing straight here? I know, I also failed. All the cubes in the Cube House in Rotterdam are tilted 45 degrees at their side. The idea here was to make the most of the space. Dutch architect Piet Blom designed the houses in the late 70s to look like an abstract forest. Each triangular roof represents a treetop. The houses stand at 3 floors tall, with an entrance on the ground floor, an open kitchen, and a living room on the first floor, as well as a bathroom with 2 bedrooms on the top floor. The Boot in Tasman, New Zealand is a hotel that looks like it comes straight out of a children's book. It even has legit shoelaces. There's a spiral staircase, cozy fireplace, kitchenette, and a bedroom with a balcony. If you ever find yourself in Mitchell, South Dakota, be sure not to miss out on their key tourist attraction, the Corn Palace. The locals have always been so proud of prairie gold that they first built a palace out of corn back in 1892 to prove to the rest of the world how fertile their lands are. What you can see now is the rebuilt version. Every year, they put new corn in 13 shades to form new beautiful murals. You've just reached your perfect spot on a deserted beach. It's so quiet here that you start to doze off. But as you open your eyes, you are shocked. Wait a minute, is that an actual house that's just been washed up on the shore? It may sound like the beginning of a sci-fi novel, but not if you live near this beach in El Salvador. There's a mysteriously abandoned house there that looks as if it's just been washed ashore. How did this villa end up there? How long has it been here without anyone noticing it? This mysterious construction is 46 miles south of El Salvador's capital, San Salvador. Locals say the building used to be a hotel called Puerto Ventura. At the time it was built, its main attraction was the fact that it was really close to the sea. Unfortunately, the engineering behind it wasn't well planned out, all because locals didn't need any official permission to start the construction. The hotel was too close to the water and dangerously exposed to the elements. The Roman-style villa is now a mere 50 feet from the edge of the sea when the tide is low. It can only be accessed in the morning because later, the tides fill the first floor with salt water. What's now left of the hotel looks like the ruins of a 2-story house. The front part is very impressive, with Roman-type pillars. It also has wide windows on the second floor. You can still see parts of the iron structures and remains of what used to be the gateway to the second floor. There are some bleachers at the top of the building. They're sometimes used by tourists. More and more people are now browsing the area, taking photos, even though the building is obviously not safe for climbing. There's little information on how long it's been sitting in its current location, but some locals say it's been there for at least 20 years. It had remained a local secret for years before it was discovered by a TikTok user in 2021. But that doesn't answer the question. How did the hotel end up in another location altogether? This is where things become a little fuzzy. While some locals say that the building was abandoned decades ago, others claim it was deserted after Hurricane Mitch hit the area back in 1998. Hurricane Mitch was one of the most dangerous weather phenomena to ever hit Central America. During the storm, the winds traveled at 178 miles per hour, and the hurricane itself lasted for about 15 hours. It was also the cause of a huge amount of rainfall, which resulted in floods and many dangerous landslides. Being built so close to the shoreline, the former hotel had little chance of surviving the extreme weather conditions, so it must have been literally displaced. After sitting under the sun, you might start dreaming of some snowballs getting washed ashore. To even out the temperature. I'm not kidding. This strange natural phenomenon did happen back in 2016. It resulted in about 11 miles of the coast of the Gulf of Aab in West Siberia getting covered with huge snowballs. Because of the low temperatures, small pieces of ice started to form in the water. Afterward, The wind and waves rolled them into giant snowballs. Some of them were the size of a tennis ball, but others were up to 3 feet wide. A 2004 Harley-Davidson night train motorcycle popped up ashore on a British Columbia beach back in 2012. It was neatly packed inside a shipping container. It took some time to do it, but the owner was eventually traced down. His name was Ikuyo Yokoyama, and he lost his motorcycle after a tsunami struck Japan on March 11, 2011. To get to its final destination, the Harley-Davidson traveled more than 4,000 miles. To celebrate its long journey, Yokoyama donated the bike to the Harley-Davidson Museum in Milwaukee. It's been on display there ever since, in case you want to visit. This strange phenomenon made it look as if someone spilled dish soap all over the beach. But it does happen pretty often in Queensland. Sea foam covers the shore there a couple of times each year. It mostly happens after a storm, when ocean waves move dissolved organic matter around. It's basically like a giant ice cream maker. After Cyclone Debbie back in March of 2017, some beaches actually needed to be closed because of huge amounts of white foam. The wind even brought some of that foam to the nearby towns, making locals believe it was snowing. Would you be surprised to see a 6 by 6 foot rusty metal die washed ashore on your local beach? Because back in 2017, people in Coeur d'Alene in Idaho sure were. It turned out to be an old storage tank. Someone decided to spice it up a bit by adding some white spots to make it look like a die. In 1992, thousands of rubber duckies got stranded at sea after a large container ship that was transporting them was hit by a wave. As you can imagine, the ducks started popping up all over the world, in Hawaii, Alaska, South America, Australia, in Europe, and even in the Arctic. It's estimated that a couple hundred of those unlucky rubber ducks are still out there. Interestingly, they turned out to be very useful to scientists. Based on their movements, researchers can monitor the direction of water currents. If you happen to like dinosaurs, you'll be happy to know sea waters can also bring ashore some fossils. In 2018, a large dinosaur jawbone ended up on the coast of Lilstock Beach in Somerset, England. It used to belong to a dinosaur called Ichthyosaurus. Thanks to this finding, scientists were able to make an impressive discovery. Before, they thought the Ichthyosaurus could reach a maximum length of about 69 feet. But after they studied the jawbone, they ended up recalculating the creature's size. They concluded that the Ichthyosaurus could grow up to 85 feet. The megalodon was the largest predator in our planet's history. It lived almost all over the globe, except near the poles. How do we know that? Because megalodon teeth keep appearing on beaches every now and then. One staggering megalodon tooth, which was way over 20 inches long, was discovered in a river in Croatia. Since these creatures have been extinct for about 3 million years, their teeth are highly prized by fossil hunters. A giant Lego man that washed ashore is something I never thought I'd hear about. And it turns out it didn't happen just once. There were 4 of these giant Lego men in total, each around 8 feet tall. One was found in England and one in the Netherlands, while the other 2 popped up in Florida and California. It was surely not a coincidence, and after some research, people found out that a Dutch artist was behind this. Ego Leonard started this project as a personal statement campaign. A short film was even made about this, and it was called No Real Than You Are. This sentence was written on each of the 4 Lego men put to sea. A bundle of over 50 letters was washed ashore in New Jersey on a beach in Atlantic Highlands back in 2012. It happened shortly after Hurricane Sandy had struck the area. A 14-year-old boy found the letters and gave them to his mom. She was so touched by them that she decided to carefully dry and return them to their owner. The letters were the correspondence of 2 people named Dorothy and Lynn. They were dated between 1942 and 1948. The last was written a week before their wedding. With the help of an online genealogy site, the woman reached Dorothy and returned the letters to the 88-year-old woman who was living in a retirement home.